What is good, everybody? Thanks for joining us here on InsideCarolina.com's Coast to Coast podcast. New edition, signing period, basketball getting started. You know we had to bring the heat. We are brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt. All right, thanks for being here. As you know, I am your host, Joey Powell. Man, we've got a crowded room tonight, but there is a lot of knowledge and a lot of savvy dressers in the room. I'll be honest, I had to put on a quarter zip because I had three collars and me looking like a man that had just walked out of Planet Fitness. So I appreciate the three guys that have joined us. You know, Sherrell, McMillan, and Sean Moran. You've come to expect great things from them here at Inside Carolina on the Coast to Coast. But we are joined tonight by 24/7's national basketball analyst, recruiting genius, Travis Branham. Travis, how are you, man?
I'm great. Appreciate you guys having me. I'm honored to be in your all's presence. You guys are the best in the business.
Hey,
I really enjoy all your all's work. So
Sherrell and
excited
Shaw
to
might
be
be the
here.
best in the business. I'm just along for the ride, but I appreciate the accolades anyway. I will gladly catch some misdirected praise anytime I can get it. Travis, look, we wanted to bring you in because as this show will be dropping on the 8th, the fall signing period starts. And as we've talked about many times here on the Coast to Coast, this has been a long and winding road for Hubert Davis to secure this 2023 class. It's going to consist of Simeon Wilcher, a 6'4", 185-pound combo guard out of Russell Catholic in Jersey, and Zayden High, a 6'9", 225-pound power forward from Texas by way of Chandler, Arizona, and Compass Prep. First things first, Travis, I want to ask you, did you anticipate this class ending up where it ended up?
It's a good question. Yeah, I would say so. They did a good job, and they went out and landed one of the top guys who you typically come to expect. North Carolina kind of going out and getting. And Simeon Wilcher first and foremost. Him committing so early was honestly a bit of a surprise. But the fact they were able to go out and get a composite 5-star, not surprising in the least. And then going after and getting a guy like Zayden High, obviously they were more involved with a guy like TJ Power early on. But they pivoted when things became clear that he was not going to end up at North Carolina. So the fact that they were able to land one of the top guys in the country, but then go out and get a solid addition who's going to be a good 4-year player for this program. No, to me, it's not surprising in the slightest, especially after having a pretty deep 2022 recruiting class.
When you were watching these guys over the past AAU season, you know, everybody's seen Sim Wilcher and they thought he was a big deal. North Carolina kind of got in on Zayden High late because he was a late bloomer, but also because of things that materialized with UNC and this class and guys deciding to go elsewhere. What was your kind of impression the first time you saw Zayden High, and when did you realize, yeah, this kid could be a high major player?
Yeah, I was actually, I think I was sitting there 2 or 3 seats down from the North Carolina staff the first time I saw Zayden High. It was the midst of that breakout weekend in Orlando, first live period of the EYBL. A lot of guys were there watching Chris Johnson. He was playing Sebastian Mack and Trenton Flowers. Trenton and them, they were on, I want to say Vegas Elite. Somebody's going to correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sorry if I got that wrong, but blanking doesn't matter.
That's right.
Yeah, I remember, but I remember sitting there during that game with North Carolina sitting right next to me, and all the coaches are starting to look at each other like, "Yo, who is this Zayden High kid?" The first impressions were obviously he's size. He's got a sturdy frame. He can handle contact. But it was the motor and energy he played with that weekend in particular. He was all over the glass. One of those guys that was putting up 10 rebounds a game I would have to go back and look exactly, but he was putting up big numbers on the glass. He was dynamic and able to get to the rim off face-up drives. They also showed the ability to step out and knock down shots out to the three-point line. So all that, when you consider his size, his frame, his ability to handle contact, the motor he played with, his ability to impact the game, both as a face-up four. He also showed he could score with his back to the basket against smaller defenders and stretch the floor. It was just one of those guys that was producing. You knew he had a high floor and going to be an effective 4-year high major player. And that was, again, the breakout weekend. And I think after that, you saw dozens of high majors get involved and really jump into the picture there. Obviously, North Carolina continued to fill it out, but first impressions was just this kid's going to be a solid 4-year college basketball player.
You mentioned earlier that, North Carolina jumped in or got a commitment from Sim Wilcher pretty early. I know the three of us, Sherrell and Sean and I were kind of shocked that he committed when he did. And I think a lot of folks who follow, those types of recruitments were shocked that he committed when he did. What's your impression of him, of Sim Wilcher? I mean, the fact that he just gravitated towards North Carolina early, the kid obviously has some dog in him, seems to be a pretty, like you said, consensus 5-star, seems to be a pretty highly regarded player based on the competition level that he's seen. Can you share your impressions of Sim Wilcher if you could just kind of distill those down a little bit?
Yeah, he emerged early. We actually had him in the top 10 when we debuted these 2023 rankings back during the middle of the coronavirus shutdowns. He was one of those kids that emerged early. He was younger brother of CJ Wilcher, kid who committed to Xavier, now at Nebraska. And honestly, most people, like myself included, we all kind of anticipated him ending up at Nebraska. But again, he surprised us all with North Carolina. Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, I know you'll know, but I'm pretty sure North Carolina was his dream school. But anytime you have those family ties to a program like Nebraska, you kind of give a little bit of an edge, competitive edge to those guys. But anyway, yeah, he committed early, and then first thoughts, score. He's always been able to make shots on the perimeter and get to the rim. He is a competitor. Each night out, he's going to go out there and put his foot on the gas pedal. He's going to stay aggressive, even if his shots are missing. He is not afraid of taking that next one at all. But he's also a talented passer. And I think there's a lot of upside in him as a playmaker. You see it come and go in flashes, but he's so wired to score that kind of shadows over that passing ability and just kind of, again, comes in flashes. So dynamic score, that's first and foremost with Simeon Wilcher, and a guy who's really improved and extended his range beyond the 3-point line.
What going into his senior year, playing with a pretty talented team, and pretty talented league that he's playing in, but what do you want to see from him as a senior as he's getting ready to go to UNC, given some of his strengths and improvement areas?
Yeah, really want to see an improved shot selection. That's the case with most of the guys who are classified as scorers at the high school level. They're able to get away with really bad shots. And he's I wouldn't say among the worst in that crop at all, but shot selection is definitely something that he needs to improve on. It impacts his efficiency and his consistency, especially on those nights when those tough shots just aren't falling for him. Again, he's not afraid to pull the trigger. He's going to keep taking them, but sometimes you got to take the step back and be willing to impact the game in other areas. So if his shots aren't falling, he's not able to go out and create and effectively score. Now you got to start playing it more as a playmaker, facilitator, and then a guy who plays off the ball and taking and just making the open shots. Simplify the game for yourself. And then also just defensively. I think that goes across the board just about with every single high school kid. You want to see them buy into the defensive end and really learn how to impact the game on that end. So a lot of it really, when you want to get down and simplify it down, it's really just maturing your mentality in your game, because frankly, he's not going to be able to come into North Carolina and take the same shot selection that he's going to be able to take, or that he takes at the high school level. He wouldn't be able to do it anywhere in the country, but specifically North Carolina. So it's just a matter of just maturing, improving that shot selection, and showing that you can be an efficient and dynamic guard who can play both on and off the ball, and really be consistent and reliable coming into North Carolina.
Hey, Travis, does it help, or how much does it help for Zayden and Simeon to be at the schools they're at, the high schools? Both lots of talent, playing very competitive national schedules. How much does that help them, moving forward as they get ready to go to UNC in June?
It helps a tremendous amount. I think we definitely take that stuff into consideration whenever we're doing projections with players. You want to see them going up against the best in the country. Excuse me. I think both of those guys are doing that this senior season. Zayden High at Compass Prep, one of the, again, premier high school programs in the country. They're extremely deep. They are tough. They play really hard. And those guys are forced to buy into a role there. And that is something, again, in similar scenario with Roselle Catholic. But even when you look across the board, IMG, Montbird, any of these schools, you're playing amongst not only against the best, but you're playing with the best. You have great teammates around you, and you really start to feel out, okay, what's my actual role here? Because you can go from just your typical high school down the road and be the complete star. You're able to have complete freedom and go out there and do whatever you want on the basketball court, but you don't really know who you are as a player until you enter into those situations where you're surrounded by guys who are better than you. And you going out and taking your shot selection that you took at your former high school, it's going to hurt the team. So you got to figure out, okay, what are my strengths and my weaknesses here, and where do I kind of flourish out on the court to continue to find playing time and contribute to a winning basketball team. So at the end of the day, it really helps the maturation process. Again, that speaking of what I was saying with Simeon, like, you learn how to take proper shots, and you're going to learn how to defend. So just at the end of the day, you learn how to win. So I think it plays a huge, huge role, and really speeds up the development process of these guys as they head into college.
Travis, I want to ask you, we talked about this when we had Bossy on a while back. Sherrell and I and Sean, all three of us, we talk UNC recruiting to death because that's our gig in this particular format. But I want to ask you, what is your perception on a national level of how Hubert Davis recruits, and what's his perception amongst these AAU coaches, other college coaches? What kind of feelings have you gotten from him watching him step onto the recruiting scene, replacing Roy Williams after so many years?
I'm going to be honest. I think we're all still feeling it out. I think their recruiting has been really interesting. It's not the Roy Williams era of recruiting anymore. You see them getting involved with just a lot of different types of kids, a lot of different types of players that maybe didn't necessarily fit the same North Carolina basketball player that we saw 2-3 years ago and saw for 15-20 years. So to be honest with you, yeah, I think we're still feeling it out. His reputation's obviously growing, especially after going to the Final Four in year number 1. I think that pays huge dividends out on the recruiting trail. But it's also a new recruiting landscape that we're all trying to navigate with NIL, with the transfer portal. Just so much happening that everybody's also trying to figure out their recruiting strategies. And I think North Carolina's probably still trying to figure out their recruiting strategy, just like everybody else in the country. So from a national perspective, on the recruiting trail perspective, I think everybody's just still trying to feel out what this North Carolina new basketball program is, and what they're everybody, a lot of programs have their own, ID out on the recruiting trail. You can go out, you can pinpoint, oh, that kid's a Houston kid. That kid's a Duke kid. That kid's like you used to be able to do with Roy Williams. That's a North Carolina kid. It used to be pretty easy. So it's what is North Carolina really going to kind of pride themselves on and really value on the recruiting trail? And so for me, I'm still trying to feel it out because, again, they've gone after a variety of different types of prospects. And so it's going to be, what do they have success with on the recruiting trail, and kind of feel it out from there.
So short answer time, and I'm going to ask all three of you guys these questions because we're talking about the 23 class. We're talking about Wilshire. We're talking about High. I'm going to ask each one of you, give me one word to describe each of the two commitments and soon-to-be signees. Sherrell, I'll go to you first. Sim Wilshire, give me one word.
Downhill.
Okay. And you're allowed to elaborate.
So basically, I think he's at his best. I wasn't sure if we were supposed to elaborate.
No, that's that. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. I think he's best when he, comes off a ball screen and just attacks the rim, because his size, his speed, his athleticism is very tough to stay in front of him. It's very tough to not foul him. So when he puts his head down, it's very much like a running back in football, going straight up the middle. It's hard to contain.
All right. Well done. Sean, same question.
I'll go with versatile. I think he, as Travis mentioned, he can do a lot on the floor. Definitely needs some improvement in some areas, but he can handle the ball. He can play defense when he puts his mind to it. He can do a lot of things. I think the main thing for him is just going to be that the focus that he is playing with on both offensively and defensively, and what level does he really want to play at. I think he's good enough to get by, but if he's really locked in, which we did see at times in Peach Jam, he can be one of the top players, but he can also blend in, and it's hard to look at some of his teammates and see which one's going to North Carolina and which one's going to the mid-major. So well, I said versatility. I do think focus might be the other word I'll use.
Well, I'm only going to give you credit for one of those, and I'll let the listeners decide which one that is. Travis, one word to describe Sim Wilcher. What do you got?
Aggressive. There's not been a single time where I have gone and watched Simeon Wilcher and come away being like, man, I wanted more out of him. Like, I needed more effort out of him. Every time the ball's in his hands, that dude is looking to score. And again, he is not afraid of taking and pulling the trigger. So I am going with aggressive, whether it's getting downhill, pulling up from three, or showing again his confidence with the shot selection. He's willing to take 4 to 5 feet beyond the 3-point line at times.
I think all three of those words should get North Carolina fans and IC subscribers very excited about Simeon Wilcher arriving to Chapel Hill. All right. The other prospect of the class, Zayden High. Sean, give me one word.
Potential. I think right now we've had a lot of conversations on his shooting ability, and I think there is the opportunity for him to significantly increase what he's doing right now and become a pretty strong shooter from the outside, just given his form. I just think that shot selection needs some work. But I think the potential to turn into a very strong stretch 4, stretch 5, whatever he's playing, whether it's next year or a few years down the road, I think he has that in him.
Sherrell?
Pesky.
Pesky. All right.
Yeah. So I say that I saw him like Travis the weekend when everything changed for him, and he was playing CP3 and GG Jackson. And again, he was the top player in the country in that class at the time. And he really bothered him. He annoyed him. He did just enough. Like, he got under his skin by, making a couple of jump shots. And then once he made a couple of jump shots, he would pump fake and go by him. And then he did some stuff in the post. He was always on the board. So just the kind of player who will do just enough to annoy you and talk to you a little bit, but never push it past the line. I've seen a lot of that from him.
All right. Interesting. Travis, same question, same player.
I'll probably go with reliable. I think there's so much that he can bring to the floor that's just going to make him a reliable 4-year guy. You need guys like that in your program, from rebounding to his face-up game. And then even to what Sherrell is saying, his pesky competitive attitude. You got to have that, especially at the high major level. Every program needs valuable role guys. And to the point of him being having upside and potential, we'll also say like he can really kind of continue to grow and develop and flourish into that role. I think might take him more than a season, as you see with a lot of these kids. But I really do think that at the end of the day, when we look back on his career when he's a senior, I think we're just going to look back and be like, man, he was a reliable 4-year guy that we had. He might only average 8 or 9 points and 3 to 4 rebounds a game at times, played 25, 20 minutes a game. But at the end of the day, it's just going to be, he was reliable.
That's the type of player that North Carolina fans are going to recognize as having been very, very successful over the UNC basketball history, is taking guys that were reliable, taking guys that were 3 or 4-year guys that weren't stars, but turned into stars during their time in Chapel Hill. Yeah, I was talking earlier in the show about having to put on a collared shirt because this group is so high class tonight. And if you're looking for a collared shirt, I'm going to tell you, you can probably find one at Johnny T-Shirt right there on East Franklin Street in Chapel Hill. I didn't have to go to Johnny T-Shirt to get one because I happen to have one right here beside my desk. But if I needed to go to Johnny T-Shirt, I could go to johnnytshirt.com and probably have one here relatively quickly to put on for our recording. JohnnyTshirt.com, you know them, locally owned, alumni operated, big supporters of Inside Carolina and all of our content. We hope that you will check them out. Use that code that's on the premium message boards to get your extra 10% discount off the top of their already amazing prices. Look, it's officially basketball season. By the time you hear this, North Carolina will have played a basketball game that counts. So now you can go get your basketball gear. You know, you can still watch football. Football teams have an amazing season. You can still be enthralled there, but you can also head on over to Johnny T-shirt and get your basketball gear at the same time. It's easy to do. Support them. They support us. We appreciate them being a part of the Inside Carolina family. Going to take a quick break and let the national guys drop their ads in here, which will not be as good as the Johnny T-shirt read, but we're going to let them run it anyway. We'll be right back with Travis Branham, Sean Moran, Sherrell, McMillan on the Coast to Coast here on InsideCarolina.com. All right, thanks for sticking with us. This is the Coast to Coast podcast, the first official show of the season. North Carolina kicking off against the mighty Seahawks from UNCW. As you hear this, it would have happened on Monday night. You know the score of that game because it already happened and will happen after we record this. But we're talking with Travis Branham, national basketball analyst. We've been talking about, UNC's 2023 class, which just had a lot of different iterations and went in a lot of different directions before getting the signatures of Simeon Wilcher and Zayden High. Sherrell, before we move on from this, do you want to give the insight as to when you expect Wilcher and High to sign?
Yeah, a quick aside, Travis, it's a long-running joke. Sean just texted us. Angelo Brizzi scored his first career college points. And during the summer of COVID, Angelo Brizzi saved us all because we talked about him more than any other player maybe in the history of this podcast. So we're all huge Angelo Brizzi fans. So
welcome to the joke, Travis.
Yeah, we're excited to see him score his first college points.
He was a hot topic for all of us.
Yeah. So on Wednesday, Compass Prep is having a ceremony for all their guys who are signing. So that's when Zayden High will sign. So he will be officially a Carolina player on Wednesday. Sim Wilcher and his school, they're looking to do theirs next week. The period closes on Wednesday, the 16th. And so they plan to do it on either the 14th or the 15th. So you won't get a release from Hubert Davis or UNC until both signatures are in. So expect something like that probably next Monday or Tuesday.
All right, man. Thanks for giving us that insight. It's again helpful for folks because when they hear this, they might, well, I haven't seen anything from the school yet. Well, Sherrell just told you why you hadn't seen anything from the school yet. But those are the two guys that will make out this 2023 class. And we figured while we had Travis with us tonight, let's talk a little bit about 24 because 23 is put to bed officially. 2024, it seems like Hubert Davis has kind of already zoned in on the guys that he wants. He's already kind of identified what seems like one player at every position. Travis, what has been your perception or kind of how do you feel that Hubert Davis is attacking, or he and his staff, I guess, are attacking this class and what they're looking for in 24?
Guards, one. He's obviously been, I think, a lot more aggressive with this class. I think they're going to need more guys in this class than they need in 23. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Again, I know you guys know this stuff like the back of your hand. So, but early on, it seems like, they're being more aggressive. But they also have a handful of guys that are local and regional that you have to go after. Jaron Stevenson being one, Cam Scott being another. So and I think there's more. Like you could even get into, I think one that they're going to be keeping a close eye on will be Isaiah Evans, another local kid at North Mech. We currently have him top 25 in the class. I know they've kind of dabbled around and watched him a little bit throughout the course of the summer. But for the most part, like you said, they are identifying their guys that they want between. I would say like Elliot Cadeau, Boogie Flan, they got on an official visit already. So they're being more aggressive. And to me, it looks like they're going after a big 2020-24 class.
And just to recap, I know Travis touched on a little bit, but the offers that are officially out right now, there are 6 of them, 7 if you include the commitment from Drake Powell, the 6'6", 175-pound wing guard out of Pittsburgh Northwood. He is one of the local boys that Travis mentioned. The other offers are Ian Jackson, who is, I'm going to give you the rankings also in 24/7 as it sits today. Ian Jackson, who is 2, Elliot Cadeau, who is 8, Jaron Stevenson, a local kid, who is 10, Boogie Fland, who is 12. It's already taken a visit. Trenton Flowers, who took an unofficial, who's 21, and James Brown, who took his junior official, is 27. Sherrell, is it too early to kind of say that there might be the class within the class with these guys? Do you feel like that's a little too early to talk about? Because I know that's one of your favorite things to mention here on the show.
Yeah, probably, because again, at this point, a year and a half ago, we're saying, oh, Robert Dillingham and Gigi Jackson are UNC's 2023 class. So like stuff changes, and it changes very, very quickly, as we've learned. So I would say it's a good kind of opening salvo for UNC to see if they can get those guys. And then, as we've seen, they've done a good job in recent years of pivoting when things that don't necessarily go their way. So if it's a situation, I personally think they probably will open up the point guard pool once AAU starts, just because Cadeau and Fland are two guys in high demand, and you can't assume you're going to get one of them. They have obviously more information than we do, but I do think that's somewhere where you'll see the recruiting board expand pretty soon as you head into AAU season in April. And then from there, James Brown is the only. It's almost disrespect to call people fives anymore. They get upset. He's the only 5'4" that they've offered. Jaren is kind of the remaining kind of 3'4", 4'3" that they're really going after. So you do start to see a class within a class and some of their preferences just by who they've not offered and who they've gotten in on visits. But again, stuff changes so quickly. A kid will go on a visit to who's the school I pick on? Let's just say Siena. He'll go to Siena on a visit and commit to Siena, and then they'll have to find someone else. And North Carolina will end up with a class next year this time that doesn't look anything like what we thought it would. So long way to go with 2024, but I do think they're in a good spot with a lot of guys.
Sean, I want to ask you, Travis did us a favor there where he mentioned a couple of guys that are loosely on UNC's radar, but have not received offers. Sean, give me one or two of those guys you'd love to see North Carolina offer, in the not too distant future.
Well, I mean, it's a good question in terms of, I guess, in terms of their offers. I was just staring at the top 15 players in 24/7, and my mind kept going between, Boogie Fland and Cadeau. Sorry, I'm going away from your question, but which one of those two could really be the potential point guard, given the emphasis on that. We spent the summer, when Stevenson initially and the wing, 2-3, and the question was, are they going to offer a point guard? Then all of a sudden, Cadeau and Fland came down, and I think they've had early success with both of them getting them on campus. But I think, to me, that's one of the main questions around the class is, who do they get? But in terms of other offers, I think it's going to be probably a few months. I could potentially see one or two offers coming around the Christmas time from some of those tournaments, but I would expect a lot of them really not to come, as Sherrell has mentioned, until AAU time, the springtime, and they really focus on who they've offered, especially with Stevenson right down the road. He was the first offer in the class, and trying to see, does he continue to take visits, enjoy the process, or can they get him, a little more interested?
Travis, I want to ask you, I appreciate you throwing out some of these other guys that are kind of on the radar. You mentioned earlier on when we talked about how UNC's class evolved and how Hubert Davis's style is still kind of TBD. How do you anticipate that people start figuring out how to play with the transfer portal? Right. I think what we saw this past year was, UNC did a good job of supplementing some of their needs 2 years ago with Brady Manick and Justin McCoy, and then this past year with Pete Nance. Do you think it's going to kind of be one of those things where each school just figures out, all right, we're going to get one guy in the portal every year, or we're going to get two guys in the portal every year? And if so, is that the type of thing that can be repeated every year, or do you feel like it's just going to be, figured out as you get there?
I think it's a mix of both, because North Carolina is a little different. Typically, who's going to be there and leave at the end. There's rarely ever a surprise decision for the guys staying or leaving North Carolina. Sorry. But yeah, you typically will know, okay, we're going to need one or two guys like a Pete Nance, a shooter, or a big man. Like you kind of know the position, what you're going to be looking for. To me, it's really hard to rely heavily on the transfer portal. So if you're looking for more than one or two pieces, you're putting yourself at risk. Now, we'll say, whether we want to, people want to believe it or not, the recruiting process of the transfer portal happens very early. Phone calls will be being made, honestly, in the next couple of weeks when kids are already unhappy in their current circumstances. They're going to start putting out feelers to other schools.
How early? I'm sorry to step on you. How early have you seen?
I bet he's already gotten phone calls from people. I bet he has.
I will say I have some of it's been joking, but some of it is not, of guys saying, hey, who's going to transfer at the end of this year?
Wow.
That question is already being asked.
And we have it like literally tonight is the first night that the season's starting. We've already got people looking towards where am I going next?
It's freaking crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. So I'll say if a school's going in and saying, hey, we're going to want a big portal class. Screw high school. We are focusing solely on the portal. It's really hard. The portal's so competitive. 1, 2, again, I don't think just like all high school recruiting classes aren't built the same. I don't think all portal classes are built the same. I don't think this past spring's portal class is anywhere near as good as the portal class from before. People can argue with me all they want, but I don't think it's as good as what it was. This is off topic a little bit, but to the point of what I was saying about feeling out Hubert Davis's style. Let's say halfway through the year last year, Brady Manick was not Brady Manick at North Carolina. I think his evolution kind of evolved what Huber was looking for in a player in that. And that's why they went after a guy like Nance so hard. They fit a similar style. Both older, experienced guys are skilled. They're smart. They make shots from 3. Nance isn't as good of a shooter as Manick was. Maybe he proves us wrong this year because he only shot 3 attempts a game last year, shot 45%, which is astounding. Don't get me wrong, but that's not 40% on 6 attempts a game. There's a bit of a difference there. So, but I think through that time, I think Hubert Davis, okay, this is something I really valued and I saw was extremely valuable to us. So that's why they're kind of evolving in how they go after it. But to your point, to your question, going after 1 or 2 guys a year is pretty I think it's going to be a pretty consistent strategy for a lot of teams across the country. I think it's a good strategy, and you go after, you prioritize who you want in high school, and you're going to see a lot less flyers taken. You're going to see a lot less high-risk players that you take in terms of kids waited till the spring 2 years ago. If they're outside the top 150 and you have a pulse, there's a chance you're getting a high major offer by the end of the year because everybody's scrambling. This time around, that's not going to happen. You are going to prioritize your Elliot Cadeaus, your Ian Jacksons, your Boogie Flans. And if that doesn't work out at the end of the day, across the board with the top 50, top 25 players, whatever you will, you're not going to go take a reach. You're just going to patiently wait out the portal at that point. So it's a bit of a fluid situation as it is always with recruiting. But relying on the portal for 1 or 2 key pieces, knowing skills that you're wanting, I think that's a pretty winning strategy.
So one name I wanted to add, and again, Travis, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. In 2024, we're talking about guys to watch out for. A name that I really like is Thomas Sorber. He's a big from Pennsylvania. Of course, North Carolina really probably won't get involved until they find out what's going to happen with James Brown. But watched him play with Team Final 16s. Really, really enjoyed him. Think he has the ability to be a really good back to the basket big. So I just wanted to put that out there. Last thing, Travis, for you, outside of North Carolina, just within the ACC, can you give us maybe 2 or 3 guys that you think highly of that you're really excited to watch in the ACC from this 2023 class?
First one I'm going to throw at 2023 class.
Yeah, who are signing.
I was going to say current freshmen. Let me think. Remind me some of these guys. I'm going to pull up the list while try to figure this out. ACC 2023 commits. One guy who I know, again, Duke fans won't be excited about this, but one guy I'm really excited to see play is Sean Stewart. He's not a super flashy player going to Duke, but he's explosive. He's really strong, and he impacts winning. Great rebounder, great defender. Again, not a polished scorer in the slightest, but the dude goes out and he's a workhorse out on the court. And again, explosive player. So that is definitely one in particular. I know he's not the most highly touted. of the recruits coming in. Sorry, I'm still trying to pull this up here. You guys caught me when I wasn't necessarily expecting. Another one I'm going to go with is going to be Jalen Lowe going to Pittsburgh. He was one of those guys that broke out at Peach Jam. And really crafty, really smart, extremely skilled, one of the best passers, if not the best passer in the entire class. He can make shots from three. Again, just crafty and savvy. He's got an extremely thin frame, which is the concern moving forward. But with how savvy and crafty he is, it's like one of those interesting experiments to see, does it work out at the high major level? And then lastly, Elijah Gertrude going to Virginia. We have him ranked inside top 40 for sure. 6'4", explosive guard. It's a bit of I am interested to see how he fits at Virginia because again, he's so explosive, so athletic. He's actually, of course, he's Simeon Wilcher's teammate on City Rocks. And he can just really get up and down the floor. He can really score. He's improving his jump shot from three. So he's one guy that I thought was a sleeper. Well, we all did, and we really kind of moved him really high up in the rankings after the July periods when they finished up. I think he has a tremendous amount of upside. If he pieces it all together, if he figures it all out, because he's also a dog of a defender. That's probably where he translates immediately the most. But I think he's one that I think we could see make a big jump come his sophomore season, like we're seeing with a lot of these guys lately, and going off to the NBA draft. So those are three of them. Elijah Gertrude, though, I am a huge fan, and honestly, he would be number one on my board.
For 2024, if you're going to pick maybe 2 to 3 guys that you could watch one time, or kind of the guys that you would want to see above others, and they could be top 10 guys or other guys you think might be coming up as they go into their junior years. But who are the top 2 or 3 just that you would want to watch? Not that are the best, but just who you enjoy watching the most
from a pure entertainment value.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. One who's kind of slept on a little bit is Zoom Diallo, kid out of Washington. Got to see him at Section 7. I didn't get to see him over the AU period, but I've seen him plenty with his high school team and also previous AU season. But he's one I thoroughly enjoy watching. Big-time competitor, big-time athlete. Just a dynamic guard. He's extremely difficult to keep guys in front, or for guys to keep him in front. He's a good playmaker. He's a good scorer. Again, he's physical and plays well through contact, and explosive athlete. So he would definitely be up there. Aside from him, may have to go with Ian Jackson, just an electric guard, tremendous athlete. Know what you're going to get out of him just about every single time he takes the floor. He's going to make some highlight reel plays. He's going to score the basketball. He's going to compete at a high level. May have to throw Flory Badunga in there too. I don't know if I can throw 30 in there, but just an absolute animal. Extremely, just high motor, extremely high motor, tons of energy, blocks everything, dunks everything, but also has an improving skill set. He can score a little bit with his back to the basket and facing the rim. But every time out there, he is going to be an absolute monster and wreak havoc on the glass and defensively. And then again, rim running and just ripping the rim off. So that will be who I'm rolling with there.
All right, Travis, last question. We'll let you get out of here. Who's going to get Freshman of the Year in the NCAA this year?
Nick Smith Jr. Think that's got to be the pick here.
Arkansas.
Yeah, the way they're going to use him this year, he's going to have complete freedom. He's going to be similar to what JD Notae. I don't know if you guys watched much of Arkansas last year, but JD Notae, they basically handed the keys halfway through the season, and he was going out there putting up 20 points a game, going off for 30. He had an explosive game against Kentucky, I want to say, in the SEC tournament. maybe it was just late into the season. I can't. It was maybe it been in February. It doesn't matter.
I feel
But
like he had 30 and a half or something one game
it was
last
something
year.
like that. It was something insane. He just absolutely exploded. But how they used him, just gave him the keys and said, go out there and get buckets and make things happen for us. I think that's how they're going to use Nick Smith. And Nick is frankly more talented than JD Note. It's not even close. He may not have the acumen that a guy who's a 4-year player have, where they just know how to go out there and score and get to their spots and create and take better shots, whatever. But Nick, going to be an explosive scorer. He's going to have those big nights, but he's also a really talented passer. Sees the floor. He's a dog of a competitor. Big time defender on the defensive end. So what he's going to be for that Arkansas team, and I'm one of those guys. I don't know if you guys have been following me much in what I've been saying, but I am on the Arkansas must bust this year. I do think it's going to be ugly at times because it's a brand new team. For the most part, they brought in a ton of new players, both from the portal and from high school. So it's going to take time for them to mesh. So I do not, like, they just got blown out by 30 in one of their scrimmages last week. I can't remember who it was to. I think it was Texas. Got blown out. So it's not going to look pretty at times. But Muss always has his dudes competing towards the end of the season in conference play, and they make deep runs. He gets the most out of his guys. And I think there's so much talent on that team this year, and headwayed and led by Nick Smith and what he does out on the floor. Long-winded way of saying he's my freshman of the year. And again, they're this team that I think is going to make some serious noise come March.
Love it, man. I actually love watching Arkansas play too. Go ahead, Sherrell.
I was just saying Nick Smith won the final offers from Roy Williams, and before he retired as coach.
That is a heck of a way to put a bow on the show and bring everything full circle. Well done, Sherrell. That's why we pay you the medium bucks. All right, man. Well, Travis, we appreciate you joining us, man. I know you've got your life is starting to slow down a little bit, but you've got a big night lined up, watching a lot of ball. Sean, you've still got 3 hours of daylight left where you are. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Sherrell, thanks for joining us, man. All of you guys, appreciate it. You make this show what it is. Travis will talk to you down the road. Thanks to Johnny T-Shirt for sponsoring. Thanks to John Siegley for producing. But for Sean Moran, for Sherrell McMillan, for Travis Branham, I'm Joey Powell. This has been the Coast to Coast podcast here on InsideCarolina.com.